China's new Type 096 nuclear submarine has just sent a shockwave through the entire U.S. defense establishment, and the Pentagon absolutely did not see this coming. For years, American naval dominance relied on one simple assumption: no rival could field a ballistic missile submarine quiet enough, stealthy enough, or powerful enough to challenge the U.S. Navy's undersea advantage. That assumption may have just shattered, because according to fresh intelligence leaks and satellite data, the Type 096 isn't just another Chinese submarine, it's a generational leap that could flip the strategic balance in the Pacific. This thing is reportedly so quiet that U.S. acoustic sensors struggled to reliably track it during simulated patrols. For the U.S. Navy, that's the nightmare scenario. Quiet equals invisible. And invisible equals untouchable second strike capability, exactly what makes a nuclear superpower truly dangerous. The moment a submarine becomes untrackable, deterrence changes forever. And Beijing knows it. Early reports suggest the Type 096 carries the new JL-3 intercontinental ballistic missiles, capable of hitting the continental United States from deep inside Chinese waters. That means China no longer needs to sail across the Pacific to strike American cities. It can stay close to home, hidden in heavily defended coastal zones, while still extending its nuclear reach thousands of miles further than before. For Washington strategists, that's the equivalent of watching a rival suddenly move its chess pieces to the other side of the board in one turn. Even more unsettling is how fast this transformation. HAPPENED U.S. analysts estimated that China wouldn't perfect a new stealth-focused nuclear boat until well into the 2030s, but the Type 096 appears to be ready a decade early, putting China ahead of expectations and forcing the U.S. to rethink everything from submarine detection networks to strategic missile defense. And with China already ramping up production capacity, there are growing fears the play Navy could field multiple Type 096s in a tight timeline, creating a fleet of ghost submarines capable of roaming the Pacific with near impunity. What truly scares Washington is the combination of silence, range, and survivability. In war games, the U.S. Navy relies on tracking enemy submarines long before they get close to missile range. But if the Type 096 can sit far off China's eastern coast, hidden under layers of civilian maritime traffic and natural acoustic cover, U.S. carrier groups suddenly lose the luxury of distance. One submarine, just one, could theoretically threaten U.S. bases from Hawaii to Guam, while staying under Beijing's protective umbrella. And here's where things get explosive. This submarine doesn't exist in isolation. China is pairing it with a massive expansion of undersea detection networks across the South China Sea and East China Sea, underwater sensors, seabed sonar arrays, drone subs, an entire Great Wall of the Sea. That means American submarines trying to counter the Type 96 may be the ones getting detected first. For the first time in modern history, the U.S. silent service advantage is facing a real, high-tech competitor. But the real turning point, the detail that is making U.S. admirals lose sleep, is that the Type 96 reportedly integrates advanced pump jet propulsion, composite hull coatings, and AI-assisted acoustic management systems. These are technologies the U.S. believed China was years away from mastering. If Beijing has closed this technological gap, the undersea battlefield becomes a lot less one-sided, and the Pacific becomes a lot less predictable. And this development lands right as the U.S. Navy struggles with shrinking submarine fleets, maintenance delays, and budget fights back home. America is trying to build Virginia-class and Columbia-class submarines fast enough to maintain deterrence, but the production lines are already overstretched. Meanwhile, China is building new shipyards, expanding dry docks, and pushing naval construction at a pace no Western nation can match. The timing couldn't be worse for Washington. Now, the question isn't whether China can challenge U.S. naval dominance, it's how quickly that dominance can erode once these stealth giants start regular patrols. And the moment one of these subs slips out into the deep Pacific undetected, the entire strategic equation changes. Because once a Type 096 disappears beneath the waves, the U.S. loses its biggest advantage, knowing where the threat is, and when you don't know where a submarine is, you suddenly have to assume it could be anywhere lurking off Guam, slipping near Hawaii, or positioning itself in the mid-Pacific where interception becomes nearly impossible. That kind of uncertainty forces the U.S. Navy to stretch its surveillance networks, divert its attack submarines, and potentially expose its own forces to counter-detection. In strategy terms, China doesn't even need to fire a missile. The mere existence of an untrackable submarine forces the U.S. to rethink every single move. And here's the twist that has military analysts stunned. The Type 096 isn't just about offense. It's a shield. By giving China a genuinely survivable second strike capability, it drastically lowers the risk that the U.S. could ever consider striking first in a crisis. If Beijing has submarines that Washington cannot find, then no matter what happens on land, China will always have nuclear retaliation guaranteed. This shifts the power balance from U.S. dominant to mutually assured, and that's exactly the strategic leverage China has been chasing for decades. But it goes even deeper. The Type 096 is emerging at a moment when China is building a massive triad reinforcement: new missile silos in Xinjiang, long-range H-20 stealth bombers, hypersonic glide vehicles, and a rapidly expanding navy. The submarine becomes the final, quiet pillar of a much larger strategy, one that aims not just to challenge the U.S., but to create a world where American forces can no longer operate near China with impunity. And for the U.S. Navy, that is an unfamiliar reality. For generations, American submarines were the hunters, the apex predators of the ocean. Now, the hunter may be facing another hunter, one that is fresher, faster to innovate, and backed by the world's largest industrial base. The Pentagon quietly admits that if China keeps scaling production, the U.S. may not be able to match the numbers or the pace. A declining American submarine fleet facing a rapidly rising Chinese one is a scenario U.S. war planners desperately hope to avoid. What's even more shocking is the intelligence chatter suggesting China might already be testing next-generation sensor-evading materials on the Type 096 platform. These materials bend, scatter, or absorb sound in ways that make even advanced passive sonar arrays struggle to lock on. If that's true, then the Pacific's undersea domain, once the USS most protected sphere, could become contested territory for the first time since the Cold War, and the timing is no coincidence. China's naval strategy has been moving toward long-range blue water capability for years. But this submarine marks the moment Beijing signals, "We're ready to operate far from home." It's the kind of message you send not to your neighbors, but to a superpower on the other side of the ocean. And the U.S. is responding, but not fast enough. Defense insiders reveal growing panic inside the Pentagon. With emergency funding proposals, accelerated sub-development meetings, and urgent alliances with Australia, Japan, and the UK through AUKUS, but even those efforts face delays, political setbacks, and industrial bottlenecks. The U.S. can't simply snap its fingers and build a submarine overnight, not when shipyards are overwhelmed. Skilled labor is stretched thin, and supply chains are still recovering. Meanwhile, China's shipyards, massive, modern, efficient, are pumping out warships and submarines on timelines that Western navies can't begin to match. And the fear is simple: by the time the U.S. catches up, China may already be operating a fleet of Type 096 submarines, silently patrolling the world's most critical maritime choke points. And this is where the story takes a darker turn. Because the darker turn isn't just military, it's geopolitical. The moment China can field multiple stealth nuclear submarines with true intercontinental reach, every nation in the Indo-Pacific will feel the strategic pressure shift. Japan, South Korea, Australia, even India, they all depend on the U.S. nuclear umbrella. But if Washington's undersea dominance is no longer guaranteed, then allies start asking uncomfortable questions. Can the U.S. still protect us? Can it still deter China? Can it still project power across the Pacific like before? Those doubts alone create cracks in alliances that Beijing can exploit without firing a shot. And China knows this. The Type 096 isn't just a war machine, it's a political signal. A message to the region that China is no longer the rising power, but the power capable of staring down the world's strongest navy. That message will ripple everywhere, from negotiations over Taiwan to territorial disputes in the South China Sea, to resource access in the Pacific Islands. When a nation can deploy an invisible nuclear deterrent, its diplomats walk into the room with a very different kind of confidence. Meanwhile, U.S. wargaming circles are quietly modeling nightmare scenarios. One scenario shows a Type 96 slipping into the deep Pacific and positioning itself between the West Coast and Hawaii. Another imagines a coordinated deployment of multiple submarines forming a moving nuclear curtain across potential U.S. reinforcement routes. And the most unsettling scenario, the one causing sleepless nights, imagines a future where U.S. satellites and sonar networks go silent, unable to track anything, leaving America blind beneath the ocean. This is not science fiction. This is the direction the technology is going, and it's happening faster than the U.S. predicted. Because China isn't just building a submarine, it's building an entire ecosystem around that submarine. Underwater drones acting as forward scouts. Seabed detection systems guiding safe lanes for Chinese vessels. Satellite constellations mapping U.S. naval movements in real time. And with AI-driven acoustic analysis, China could soon detect U.S. subs more efficiently than the U.S. can detect China's. The undersea balance, a domain the U.S. dominated since World War II, is shifting like tectonic plates under the ocean floor. Every advantage America used to rely on stealth, sensors, numbers, industrial strength is being challenged simultaneously.